Good morning. I actually got about 4.5 approximately hours of solid sleep last night, which is the first time I've had solid sleep in the last few days anyway. And it felt good. Today, the title is My Message from Spirit to Me and You. Yesterday's court experience exceeded my expectations and allayed much of my fears. Not only was the same judge courteous to me, the state prosecutor actually moved things forward in a way that may benefit me greatly. My observer friend said, quote, "It may not look it yet, but you are winning." End quote. After we had lunch together and I went home to get some rest, Spirit impressed upon me the importance of seeing others as humans and to trust the process. The message kept coming through in last night's love line here at the center, and I share it with you now. Indeed, I went into the court, as I said yesterday, not knowing what to expect. I did not have a specific game plan. I was going to simply go with the flow, as I said in yesterday's video. I met with the state attorney prior to the event in court. He was a little bit late, but I was early, as usual. And when I finally did get to meet with him, initially he told me he was unable to give me the information regarding the initial arrest for driving without a license. He didn't have that information, he told me. Well, before the court even started, he came back to me in the back of the courtroom where I was seated, and he said, "Mr. Van Dyke, I was incorrect. I looked it up, and indeed, I do have the material that you requested. And I'm going to request of the judge that since I have both of them, I'm going to combine them, the resisting arrest charge and the driving without a license charge. I'm going to combine them, and I'm going to ask the judge to move the hearing or the sounding for today to the 27th, when you're also scheduled to be here." And that was right after that is when my friend said to me what I quoted him as saying in the blurb. And indeed, that shifted my energy tremendously. Just knowing that what I had wanted all along, put them together. They're not separate incidents. The arrest thing had everything to do with the driving without a license charge, wherein, as I said in court yesterday, I still have not seen the warrant. I still have not seen the summons. They've never been presented to me, even though I've been arrested and I'm standing on charges for something that I was never properly notified of. But in any case, several things happened in the courtroom yesterday that affected me, and I really didn't get it all, even as it was happening. It was afterwards when I came home and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep the previous 2 nights because of my anxiety, my fear, if you will, of what might happen. And Spirit was battling with me back and forth. My higher self was saying, "You're okay, everything's going to work out." And my ego was saying, "But I don't see it. They're going to do this, they're going to do that." I was seeing all the negative, and the positive was being brought to me by my higher self. And this, tennis match between the two was going on in my mind, back and forth. And then when I got home from the court yesterday and I wanted to get some rest, twice I laid down and twice I could not fall asleep, but this time it was because I was so excited about what Spirit was showing me. And what happened in the courtroom, the first 2+ hours, it was just all the attorneys coming, sometimes with 1 or 2 cases, sometimes with 5 or 6 cases, and it varied how many cases they were actually representing. And in some cases, it was an attorney representing the client for another attorney who couldn't be there. So the attorneys were playing this chess game with the judge, and there must have been 100 cases that they had represented. There were, oh God, there had to be at least 30 or more attorneys in the courtroom, at least that many. And I was watching them interact. And I was, in many cases, seeing the very human side of them, including and especially the judge. And I remember, even in the first thing, I mean, he's not a bad person. He's a hard-nosed son of a gun, but he's not a bad person. And I was seeing that. I was seeing the human side of these people playing this game, trapped in the matrix as much as anybody's trapped in the matrix. The state prosecutors, state attorneys, whatever, had to have all these boxes of files, and as each one came up, they had to pull the file, and the judge had to have the information on his computer screen. And I mean, the system is amazing at how they, the network that they've created with putting all this thing together. And of course, it's a money-making scheme. It's all about making money. And my friend pointed out to me that each one of these attorneys, each one of these cases that we're representing, that's a $200 bill to their client. Generally speaking, it's about a $200 bill for each one, even though it took in many cases 20-30 seconds to get what they were seeking, or in some cases it was denied. But each one, and some of them had 5 or 6 representations. That's $500 or $600 for 2 minutes work. 5 or 6, not 5 or 600. It's 200 times 5 or 6, which is $1,000 or $1,200 for just a couple minutes work. What a racket! But anyway, after the attorneys all got their opportunity to do their thing, because of course they're part of the inside club, then the people that were not represented by the attorneys, and there were, 10 or 12 of us maybe, and I got to listen as each of those came up, and I was, third from the last, fourth from the last, or 3 people after me. In any case, one man in particular who was early on, I think he was the second or third one to go, I saw immediately he was guilty of being a black male. And I say that because it's sad that that's how the system trusts us. And he was actually pleading to take 10 days in jail. He identified himself as a Muslim. He did not take an oath. He affirmed, would not raise his right hand. He was told by the judge when he was finally pleading out and taking the jail time, he says, you're giving up your rights. When you plead out, you're waiving your rights. And he said, yes, I know that. They haven't done me any good. And after he had done there, the bailiff was standing behind him with the handcuffs. And he asked the judge if he could make a statement on something he had written. And he took out several pages. The judge says, you're not going to read all that, are you? And he said, no, I'm going to bullet point it, sort of like a PowerPoint presentation. And this was the 4th time he had stood before, 4th different judge he had stood before. He had been acquitted 3 other times, but here he was again on the same charges. And he said, I kept trying to stand up for my rights, but I realized I didn't bring charges of harassment against the police. for false arrest several times. I didn't do the proper thing. And he says, I just want to get it over with. And so he took 10 days in jail, and there were some other stipulations that were going to follow when he got out of jail so that he'd still be controlled by the system. But my heart broke as he shared his story. And as I said, I was seeing guilty of being a black male. And I almost cried. And I was sitting very close to the judge at that point, actually. I believe I was the closest in proximity to the judge of anybody in the courtroom, with the exception of the stenographers and the people that were to the judge's right. I was to his left. And I don't know if he saw the expression on my face and saw the emotion, because I tend to be quite expressive with my emotions. And I don't know what effect that would have. But when I got a chance finally to get up there and stand before the judge, he asked me, Mr. Van Dyke, and I said, that's my family name. And immediately, the state attorneys took over and said that we had had conversation prior to the courtroom and what he was going to do, what he was asking the court to do. And I got a chance to speak. And I said how important it was that these two things be brought together, because I had never yet, to that date, seen the warrant or seen any summons. I had never been issued a summons, never been issued a warrant. And that's due process of law. And one of the things, let me go back, the judge emphasized to a few of the people at least that they, by pleading, they were waiving their rights. And he said on at least 2 occasions, you have constitutional rights. By pleading, you're waiving those rights. And I made the point that I don't waive my rights easily. That's not, I mean, I can waive my rights if I'm forced to. I could say I will never voluntarily waive my rights. If I am forced and coerced under threat, then I will do what I have to do to preserve what little freedom I'm allowed in the matrix. However, I do not waive my rights easily, and what happened yesterday, they were ready to go to non-jury trial. I mean, he was even going to waive the 27th view in August and go to an October trial date with a non-jury trial. Well, I'm not quite that confident in trusting the system to allow a judge to make the final decision. One of our rights is to have a trial by jury. And this is a case more than $20, because they're asking for it'll be at least several $100s if I were to pay their fine for doing what I never did wrong, for committing a crime that I never committed. I mean, I did things that they said I did, and that's the truth. But there was no crime involved, and I am confident that if I were to stand before six jurors even in the de facto courts, I would inevitably win. I mean, inevitably, unless they did not allow me to speak at all, which I think with some people I would win even if they tried to do that, because it would be obvious that they were manipulating and coercing the situation. So anyway, point is, I began to see them as human beings, and they acted as human beings when it was my turn, and actually listened. And the judge actually listened to that man as he went on. He took up probably the most time of anybody. Well, I probably took up an equal amount, but he and I were the 2 longest lasting times before the judge. And it was approximately a 3-hour process altogether, not counting the half an hour, actually over half an hour that I was there early. Anyway, see others as human beings. I tend, and we all tend, to see each other through the labels and the judgments that we have placed on them. I'm guilty of that. I do it all the time, and I'll bet you do too. See them as human beings, because you can't love a judgment or a label. You can only love a living being. When you are able to see others as human beings, something happens spiritually that affects the material world. And I saw that yesterday. And trust this process. We are on an accelerated curve to become more than we thought we were, more than we've been trained to know about ourselves. But we must see each other as human beings and accept all of the emotions and all of the stories and not invalidate any of it. But let each person be where he or she is and love them anyway. This is what happened in the love line last night as the 16 of us gazed into 15 other pairs of eyes and saw reflections of ourselves in that mirror of the soul presented by that other man or the other woman that was standing in front of us. Something amazing is happening in our world, and we're going to change everything through the power of love. Thank you for listening. Namaste.